Ray Bradbury used to define his genre, science fiction, as the art of the possible. However, what are the first things that come to our minds as we hear the words science fiction? Sometimes it's possible we connect it with images from popular science fiction works, space operas such as Star Trek, or even futuristic fantasy movies like Star Wars. Some other times, we are compelled to picture the genre as exclusively fit for brainiacs, scientists and nerds from all the world. That is to say, we think that scientific speculation is only the element of interest in this field. Those who are more familiar with science fiction books and movies know that it's hard to pinpoint an exact definition. Sometimes media and public alike run into mistakes and fallacies, and the masters of science fiction themselves have been trying to establish comprehensive features that include the wide range of topics and fields of application that science fiction refers to. It is useful sometimes to call upon these same masters to discover new points of view. On this matter, Frederick Pohl makes a very compelling case about the content of a sci-fi story, including the emotional feedback of the reader. Does the story lead me to think new kinds of thoughts? Does it illuminate events and trends of today by showing me where they may lead tomorrow? Does it give me a fresh and objective point of view on my own world and culture? The author asks himself. Maybe this is indeed the key to understanding the concept of science fiction, to analyze how it relates to the present and to the future, and to examine its main topics. That's the reason why the three stories that we will call pills of science fiction are, on one hand, the sum of all the elements unique to each of the three main phases in the history of science fiction. On the other, they bring forward considerations about how writers approach to their reality and what kind of topics they deal with in their work. The first pill is Caves of Steel, first novel of Isaac Asimov's Robo Cycle. The Russian writer is one of the main figures in the developing of the so-called Golden Age, going roughly from the early 40s to the end of the 50s, in which science fiction could find its own dimension, taking a distance from the second-class literature of the pulp magazines. This particular book is an ideal crossroad between a current that was defined as hard, focusing on scientific precision, and another later defined as soft, that dealt with human and political sciences, implementing a social analysis of the modern world. Caves of Steel is, de facto, a detective story that takes place in a very distant future. The main character, a policeman named Elijah Bailey, is asked to investigate a murder and is partnered up with a robot detective called Danielle. The first key to comprehend this work can be identified in the relationship itself between the ill-matched couple that has inspired many other science fiction authors ever since. The initial diffidence towards the robot changes with time, as Elijah gets to know his partner's skills and capabilities and its way of thinking. This is a metaphor for the relationship between man and technology. Nonetheless, the story is integrated in a larger social and human context that includes a full description of this imaginary future humanity. The name of the book itself, Caves of Steel, is referred to the gigantic megalopolis in which humankind has enclosed itself, where men, like ants, humbly follow their path and convince themselves that the agoraphobic relationship with nature and all of the material sacrifices that they were forced to accept are a triumph of civilization and progress. This concept, progress, was particularly meaningful during the 50s. In describing the future humanity, the novel offers suggestions to the one from the present, observing how the relationship between man and nature becomes more and more detached, or how for centuries we have been experiencing a process of gradual urbanization. Apart from the little elements of the future that Asimov has been able to predict, and those that can still occur, it is in its substance that the novel never ages. This first pill shows that an expert writer is both able to speculate on technology and to analyze the future and the present from a social point of view. Pill number 2 is a short story titled Riders of the Purple Wage by Philip Joseph Farmer. When science fiction began stagnating due to its repetitive topics and sober literary style, The new generation of writers, along with the social turmoil of the late 60s, gave birth to a revolutionary movement called the New Wave of Science Fiction. The new authors deal with stronger themes in their work and use a more literary style. The almost pornographic situations of the story and its style, openly aspired to James Joyce, make it a perfect product of its age. This tale is inspired to the Triple Revolution document, sent in 1964 to US President Johnson, in which the ad hoc commission maintained that humanity was on the brink of three distinct revolutions: cybernation, weaponry, and human rights. The letter demanded that these changes be fully analyzed and economical and political actions be taken accordingly. The story takes place 150 years in the future, when humanity has established a social state and individuals live out of the so-called purple wage, no longer needing to work in order to survive. In this context, the plot revolves around the daily misadventures of a young artist named Chib. In the enormous archaeologies dwelled by humankind, art and culture are the only activities man can focus on, and Chib needs to win a government grant in order to keep painting. The story analyzes the various aspects of an instinctive and extravagant society, as the young man soon finds himself dealing with the complete lack of objectives that such freedom generates. In Riders of the Purple Wage, the writer completely set aside any technological rigor in favor of a wide analysis of humankind, society, and individuals. The unemployment caused by computerization has been recently brought to attention by researchers and scientists from all over the world. In this aspect, the story is still enjoyable and up-to-date after 50 years from its composition. The second sci-fi Pillole represents a kind of literature when man is at the center of the writer's speculation, and once again its message is intended from the present humanity. The third and last Pillole is an episode from the TV series The Black Mirror, called The Entire History of You. After the New Wave, there was no need for a further revolution in the whole science fiction genre, and the authors could keep pace with scientific and social developments, keeping both the traditional and the New Wave styles and topics. Since the 80s, the main elements of speculation has been undoubtedly the progressive computerization of our world. The story that is hereby to be analyzed is an ideal fusion of classic cybernetics elements and others taken from the recent tendency of developing a social technology. The Entire History of You portrays an alternate reality where every person has implanted a grain device behind the ear. The grain enables the user to record and later relive everything he or she sees and hears, or even share these memories with other people through any kinds of monitor. Our technology is getting progressively closer to the body, moving from laptops to the smartphones and from these to glasses and watches. What if the cyber could actually become reality, not to enhance humanity on a physical level, but rather following a social tendency? The plot focuses on Liam Foxwell, who is driven mad by jealousy when he realizes that his wife has a strange behavior towards an ex-boyfriend of hers called Jonas. Living and analyzing any memory with his grain, soon Liam gets obsessed with his rival until he physically assaults him to make him remove every memory of his wife. Doing so, he discovers that his wife has actually cheated on him while they were already married, casting a shadow over his baby's daughter paternity. The story is inspired by two contemporary tendencies linked to the social networks and the new technologies: the substantial changes in our conception of privacy and in sharing our private life with others, and the excessive attachment to our past that we express thanks to the timelines social networks make available. In this Pillole, science fiction loses every contact with a possible future, maintaining its vision into the allegorical dimension. Through depicting the extreme consequences of our tendencies, we are made aware of their danger.